Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, we're going to be talking about why does he do that? A peek into the mysterious masculine mind with Tim Wade. After being blindsided by an unexpected midlife divorce, Tim Wade turned his deepest wound into a powerful message of transformation that he has shared with thousands of men worldwide. Tim created Lion-Hearted Men Coaching to help men thrive in their relationships by teaching them the counterintuitive secrets that allowed him to become a strong, confident, and compassionate father, partner, and lover. I am so excited for this conversation today because every time I've spoken to Tim, I just feel such a great vibe from him and such a depth of knowledge. And I'm excited to bring a man on the show, which doesn't happen very often. So welcome, Tim.
Hey, Marie Elizabeth, it is great to be here.
I'm so excited. So first of all, I've heard you say that there are cultural, societal, and familial factors that shape the way men and women behave and relate to each other. Would you expand on that from the male perspective, please?
Sure. Well, first of all, men and women are different. Shocker, right? Just in this news headline, right? But how are they different? Well, certainly there are lots of studies on, well, how is the brain wired? How are they different with their, testosterone and estrogen and all of those things. And also the study of nature versus nurture. And what I deal with a lot is the nurture part. In other words, what do we learn growing up? What do we watch our parents do that's modeled to us? Oh, okay, that's how a relationship works, right? And also what we're taught by the media, by society, by everything. And there are some definite, very, very striking differences in the way men and women think and communicate in particular. And I know that there are women that I meet that say, oh, the name of the episode, Tim, why does he do that? Or what is he thinking? Or I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of a mystery to them, not even kind of, can be of a conundrum of like, I don't think like him. I guess, I never will. That's the other thing they say. I never will. And I don't think that's the truth. I think that we can both genders can learn how the other one feels and thinks and looks at things, because we all have, a unique, subjective, idiosyncratic perspective on the world, just as human beings, right?
Well, and we all have masculine and feminine within us, right?
Exactly.
So we all have the capacity to respond from either side or an integrated version. And so I agree with you. I think it's something that we can learn to bridge that apparent divide.
Apparent divide.
The default. The default.
That's a great way to put it. And that idea that we have access to both feminine and masculine energy, it gives me a lot of hope that men can understand the feminine as not just foreign, right? Yeah. It's not, yes, it is other to them, but also it's like you have that ability in you. You can get it.
Yes.
If someone can teach you.
Absolutely. Right. And like you do so beautifully. So what are the kinds of things that you usually hear? Like, why does he do that? What's the main complaint that you hear? And can you break it down?
Okay. So I think it's pretty well established that the number one complaint many, many, many women have who are, in a long-term relationship or they're married is
with a man. Mm-hmm.
Why do I have to ask him to do things like take out the trash? Or,
oh yeah.
Does that sound like familiar?
And why do I have to ask him again and again and again?
Right.
Like, why doesn't he just see it?
Yes, exactly. Or anything that she sees around the house and says, I see that it needs to be done. Why can't he do it? Or when I ask him, why can't he do it right now? Instead of, I'll get to it, right? There's an old joke that says, if a man says he'll fix something, he will fix it. You do not have to remind him every few months.
That feels accurate. Yeah. And right? Again, I want to stress that if you're in a queer relationship, with if you're two female bodied people in a queer relationship, there is someone who might be embodying the more masculine stereotypical role as we're describing it. So
Absolutely.
please listen with that filter in mind. So because Tim works with men, he's talking about men, and there are applicable, if you happen to hold the more masculine pole in your relationship and you are in a female body, this doesn't exclude you. Keep listening. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Not only that, I think there's one other caveat, and that is I don't speak for all men, certainly.
Of course.
And these are generalities. And if you're listening and you go, well, that doesn't happen in my house, that's fine. Maybe there's something else you'll hear that is useful. So maybe he takes out the trash every time without fail.
Yeah.
Keep listening, see if there's other things. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the idea of how men view the division of work, so to speak, in a relationship, or how the masculine views it. I believe that for a long time, men have held on to the stereotype that there is men's work and women's work. That's a thing. And of course, it's not a thing. We now have moved into an era when there are stay-at-home dads. There are men who do childcare. There are men who cook, obviously, and decorate and do also. And it doesn't mean that they're any less masculine.
Yeah, my fiance does the bulk of the cooking.
There you go. So, but I think a lot of men still hold on to that because that's what they were taught, and so they have this ingrown this thing inside them that says, "My job is to protect and provide, not fix and maintain things." Okay, so there's a maintenance aspect to the laundry, the ongoing cooking, the cleaning, all that stuff. And so some men, they don't even think about it consciously. They just have it ingrained in them that it's like, yeah, I even if you have two people working, it's like I bring home money. I have my mind on big things, like,
right.
It's a big repair in the house, the water heater breaks, things that, like childcare or things like that. They know it needs to be done, but they also sometimes feel like maybe I'm not good at that inherently. So it makes them anxious, believe it or not. I can't tell you how many men I talk to who they love being a dad, but initially it made them very, very anxious that they wouldn't know how to do it.
And would you say the tendency is when they feel that anxiety is to move away from that thing then?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. As one does.
We're all pain avoidant creatures, right? So they tend to say, well, she's so good at it. Here's what I hear. She's such a great mom. And they say it with wonder and admiration and almost like you are a magician doing something miraculous and impossible. And I understand that. And even when I was a new dad, and I love being a father, the first couple months I was flummoxed. I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And the first time that my wife left the house with me and the baby, I was like, okay, just breathe. You're okay. You're all right. And I think I called her like 10 minutes in, and she's like, really? I mean, seriously, what's going on? I don't know. She's crying and I'm holding her, but I just,
yeah.
So to have a little compassion and empathy that men don't feel confident in certain areas because they watched, maybe their father wasn't that way. Maybe their father's father wasn't that way. And so they've believed this idea, I can't do that. So that's one reason why that men can shirk or, not lean into
or
those.
or tend to just miss things, like not see the trash is overflowing.
Now that's the other thing is
I was going to say, could you say a word about attention and the difference between the way men typically utilize attention and the way women typically do?
I will. That's a perfect point. And that is, believe it or not, men often just don't notice.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, they have a higher tolerance for things like, I don't know, smelly trash. Not everyone, but certainly some. It's just not something that's on their radar. And part of it is, Alison Armstrong, who's done decades of work, working with men and women and getting them to understand each other. She says that women have diffuse awareness. Like they're able to look at a lot of things at once and take it all in. They can spin plates. I remember saying that to my wife, like, how do you spin all the plates? Men tend, not exclusively, but tend to have more focused awareness. There's a task to be done. I do it. I get her done kind of thing, right? And they're not noticing as they're walking through the house, they're not going, oh yeah, trash needs to be changed, or that needs to be cleaned up, or that should be put away, or no, they're not thinking of that.
Mm-hmm.
And they get focused, like I said, on bigger picture things, a problem at work, fixing the roof, things like that. So that's one reason why is that they really don't notice. So the question is, what do you do? In my opinion, it's always like, well, okay, if I have this understanding, he doesn't know if he can do the other stuff or whether he should. He also doesn't notice things that have to be done. We'll get to the asking and it not happening in a moment, but just on this point, if you have a good communication in your relationship, sit down and talk to him about what his ideas are about division of the chores and the tasks. Get it out in the open. Tell him your vision, how you would like it to be, or how you saw it coming into marriage. Like, this is what I thought it was supposed to be like.
Well, that would be so great for both partners to share. It's like, this is what I saw, this is what I wanted to create, and this is what we have, right? And how, and is that aligned, right?
Yeah, and be willing to give up that idea you had, wherever you picked it up along the way, and say, well, what's going to work for us? And actually have a conversation for possibility around who will do what, when, and how, and all that stuff. And I teach men to not say, well, why is it me that has to do the trash? Those kind of things. That's not the point. The point is, things don't have to be equal, but they do have to have a sense of that they are fair. Like, we don't all have to do the same thing, and we don't have to carry around a ledger book. A lot of people carry a ledger. Well, he did this, I did that, she didn't do this, or he didn't do this. And the scales are always going like this. If you can drop the ledger and just say, hey, we're here to contribute all we can to the greater good, to the relationship, the family, then you stop keeping score.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to give. That's what I want to do. And if what I do helps my partner, eases their load, makes them feel less anxious, awesome. That's a win.
Great. Yeah.
Right?
Big time.
So that's, I think it's talking about it is for sure a start.
I just thought of something. Can we, before we go on, I just want to stay with the talking about it for a second, because I want to highlight the importance of approaching that conversation without blame. So just as you highlighted, it's a conversation about division of labor, about possibility, about what you each want and how to bring together what you each want in such a way that you don't end up in this ledger keeping, tit for tat comparison, one up, one down situation. And so if there's resentment present because the labor has been very lopsided for a long time, there might need to be some preparation done on the part of the partner who feels they've been overgiving, doing too much. Right. That partner might have to do a little clearing work of their own resentment before they have that conversation, so the conversation just doesn't devolve into blame. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. In fact, another common thing that's brought up is, why doesn't he listen? Why doesn't he hear me? So why doesn't he know that this is hard on me? Why doesn't he know that I have resentment about this? And I don't think it's fair for either partner to say, you have to read my mind, you should know, right? It's interesting. None of us were taught how to listen, actually, believe it or not. We were all told to listen. I was told that a lot in school. Stop talking and listen. But nobody ever said, here's how to listen. And so when you come to a conversation like this, there are two things you want to drop as much as you can. And the first one is judgment. So that would be blame and making the other person wrong and needing to be right and all those kind of things. The other one is agenda. Like, this is the way I think is right to do it, and I'm going to make sure I try to convince you that that's the case. And usually and you have to change.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more off-putting than those two things in any sort of conversation, is when someone has judgment and someone has a you have to change for me to be happy agenda. Now, it doesn't mean that the other person isn't going to adjust things. That's not the point, but it's having the you must. Yeah. You must. I cannot deal with anything unless you are the one to, and I'm fine over here. I got my stuff together, right? But instead, with an open mind, and letting go of those things, then you can listen for understanding. You can listen for compassion and empathy. So I think that even if you aren't able to clear all of the resentment, you might be able to come to the table with, this has been really hard on me, and I've felt these ways. I've felt burdened, ignored, maybe even unloved. I felt this way. And and this is what I teach my clients, is how do you listen to that without getting defensive? Yes. And validating, like validating and listening is one of the most amazing skills ever, which is to say, I understand how you feel. And you don't make them wrong for feeling that. And you may say, I can see why you'd feel that way. I might feel that way if I were in your position. Those are all validating statements. And it's really healing to hear those, to have someone sincerely see you. In fact, there's an author who wrote a book about listening. I think it's called Care Enough to Listen and Listen Enough to Care. And he said that the experience of being understood and seen and acknowledged is indistinguishable for most people from feeling loved. Yeah. And that's huge.
Huge.
If people say, well, I don't feel loved. Well, how do I love you? Well, that's a first step. Seeing the other person without judgment. When they see into your non-shaming eyes and see that you get them, oh my God, that's profound. Absolutely profound. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a really important thing throughout any of this stuff about, why does he do that? Coming to it from a place of curiosity and empathy and compassion, right? And
that's what I teach all the time. It's like, get curious, stay curious.
Yeah.
Don't just assume the worst, like that your partner is your teammate. Like, in theory, they've got your back. I mean, unless the relationship is toxic, et cetera, it's not necessarily what we're speaking to today, but it's like a lot of women that I speak to don't have, and myself included, it took me a while to get that this is my teammate, that this person I'm in relationship with is actually on my side and does want the best for me. So when they're doing something that doesn't feel good, chances are it's not on purpose and they just don't know any better.
Right.
And when I was able to really internalize that, and we've internalized that as a couple. So if I start responding in such a way that it feels to Patrick like I've forgotten that we're on the same team, he will often pause the conversation and simply say, hey, remember, we're actually on the same team. Like, I've got your back here. How would this conversation go differently if you remembered that?
Exactly.
And then I have to pause and go, oh, right. Okay, well, yes, then I would ask for this, or then I would do that, and I would stop criticizing you.
And thanks for the reminder, partner.
Exactly. Thanks for the reminder.
Right. And here's the thing. Most of the time, what people, when they do something that feels hurtful, they're not doing it to you. They're doing it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean
would you say that again? That is so good. Say that again.
Okay, they're not doing it to you. They're doing it for themselves. In other words, they're doing it as a way of protecting themselves, avoiding pain, avoiding shame, whatever it is. They have these reactions in order to feel safe, feel okay. And unfortunately, those things we do to protect ourselves often wound others if we're unconscious about it.
Yeah.
And on one hand, people look and they say, well, why isn't he different than that? Why doesn't he change? Instead of looking at it, wait a minute, I don't have to necessarily take this personally, because I think he's protecting himself.
Exactly.
And
so I want to come back to, I feel like this circles back so beautifully right here to, why doesn't he listen to me?
Yeah, exactly. Because men and women listen differently. They really do. We listen through different filters. All of us do as humans, but men and women have some very specific, I would call them filters, that they listen through. Men are from Mars and women are from Milwaukee. So there's an interesting thing. There was a woman named Deborah Tannen. She's been around for a long time. She wrote a book called "You Just Don't Understand." I read it.
Great book, classic.
It's a great book. I read it quite a long time ago, but she studied children and how they play as a way of figuring out how do men and women as adults communicate. And women tend to play house with their best friend, and you do tea parties and talk and share secrets. Little boys, so those are girls, young girls, I mean, little boys tend to play games of competition, or they build something, or they fix something. And neither is, right or wrong. It's just is what it is. Well, now suddenly we're adults. And a woman thinks, I've married my best friend. And what we're going to do is we're going to play house, so to speak. And we're going to share secrets together and talk and do all that stuff. And the man is looking everything at from the, was there a problem to fix here?
Right.
What are the facts and information you're trying to tell me?
What are we building?
What are we building? What are we not building? And all of those things. So he's listening for a certain thing. And that's why a lot of men just try to fix things. They come in to a conversation thinking, how do I fix this? Because that's what I do, right? And the woman's saying, and this is the classic, right? No, I just want you to listen. I just want to be heard. And the man, unless he's taught that, he wouldn't know it. Same on the other side of the street, though. If she doesn't know that he is listening for, how can I be useful? How can I prove my worth? We prove our worth as men by doing a lot of things, whatever that is, being the hero to a certain extent, right? And I want to go back to actually.
Oh, can I give an example?
Oh, yeah.
So this particular thing got so much easier for us, and I'm saying this for the benefit of the listener, when we did one of two things. Depending on the situation, we do one of two things. The first is I preemptively, before I say the thing I want to say, will pre-condition his listening to what I want. So I'll say, hey, I have this thing. Would you help me fix it? Or, hey, I have this thing. I just want you to hear me vent. Like, would you be willing to just listen? I just need to hear myself talk. So I'm already conditioning his listening beforehand to what I want.
That's brilliant.
If I forget to do that, and the option 2 comes into play, I might start down some kind of, I might share something with him. And sometimes his response is, thank you. Do you want me to fix this? Do you want me to look for a solution? Or are you just wanting to be heard? So before he even starts answering, he asks which it is. And so both those are two options for how you can do this thing that we're talking about, that Tim and I are talking about, of making sure you're getting the listening in the right channel. And you, as the speaker, can help to create that. And also the listener can learn to ask which channel you need. And in that way, it goes a lot more smoothly.
And that's exactly what I teach my clients is ask. In fact, in the listening, when you start with, I want to listen for understanding. I'm not listening for, do I agree with this person or not? Do I think they're right or wrong? Or do I need to fix them somehow? You don't listen for that. And then if you're confused, if you don't know, you ask, just like that. And there's also a point, and this actually applies to being a parent as well. I have 2 teenagers, and that's always an adventure.
Lord have mercy.
Oh, yeah. And instead of going directly to, oh, here's my advice, here's my fix, here's the way to do it, I will ask, wow, that sounds really tough. What are you going to do about that? Or what do you think you're going to do about that? And it's a way of, especially with teenagers, empowering them to know that they have the wherewithal to solve a lot of things. Now, if it's totally off their, age appropriate radar, that's fine. I'll help them. And they may say, I don't really know. I said, well, let's brainstorm. What do you think you could do? And so now you're not dealing with a child in an adult partnership, but you can say, like you said, do you want some help with that? Or do you have an idea what you're going to do if it's a dilemma or something like that? And give them the opportunity to either say, I don't know yet, but I just glad you heard me. I'm glad you listened. Or, yeah, I'm still thinking on that. If you have any ideas, I'm open. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is important is not only that men listen differently and women listen differently, but women ask or approach things a lot of times from a different angle. Again, it's a generality, but because for so many decades and decades, women were not taught to be assertive, a lot of women ask indirectly. And it might sound like, wow, the trash is really full.
Right. Oh my God. Totally.
Or they hint at something, even more subtly. Woo, what's that smell? Or something. I don't know what it would be. You're right. Or, and you brought this up earlier, they repeat themselves. So they and what happens is when they repeat themselves, and this is like a vicious cycle, they repeat themselves, so the man stops listening. So they repeat themselves, so the man. I had a friend whose father said, you don't have to really listen to your mother because she tends to repeat herself. Like, oh boy.
Yeah.
And so knowing that a man listens much more literally in general, he listens for, like I said, the problem. He listens for instructions, directions, information, all of those different things. So the more direct, like a direct ask is better.
Yeah. That's what I teach too.
Yes. I have a feeling we're on the same wavelength in so many ways about this stuff, right? So, I need you to, or I would like you to, is a great way to ask. Here's not a great way to ask. Would you like to take out the trash?
Well, no.
Really, and my I'm divorced, and have been for about 7 years. But my co-parent and my ex-wife, have such a great relationship, and I jokingly say I'm a better husband now than when I was married.
And that's so cool.
We have learned a lot of these techniques over the years and practiced them with each other, being, a divorced couple. And it's been easier in some ways because the stakes aren't as high at this point, right? So we learned where I would jokingly say to her, she'd say, would you like to take out the trash? And I would say, no, it's not really what I live for. And then she'd laugh and she'd say, would you please take out the trash? Absolutely.
I'd be happy to. Yeah. Yeah. Patrick and I have a game similar to that, where if I make a request and it's laden with, oh, would you do this thing because I'm at the end of my rope and it's too hard, like if it's got any kind of weird energy in the request, Patrick will say, no, ask again. And I have to go inside and go, okay, what was on that? Oh, I have a belief that I should be able to do everything myself. So asking for help is a sign of weakness. Let me get that one off and let me come back to the request and make it again. And until I can make the request in a clean fashion, as clean as like, would you pass the salt? Until I can say it with that level of emotional charge, he'll say no. And then the moment it hits him with no emotional charge, he's a yes. And this happened a lot earlier in our relationship. I maybe had to practice multiple times to get it. And now it kind of just occasionally will happen as a joke. He'll be like, are you sure you want to ask me like that? Ask again. And I'll be like, oh, you're right. I did that thing. I did that thing. And I'll laugh. Yeah. Yes. And what I want to highlight there is it can also be playful. Like what Tim and I are talking about can be practiced with humor, collaboration, teamwork. This doesn't have to be a heavy, onerous thing.
Yes, it's like you can have this feeling, she's not out to get me.
Yeah.
He's not trying to make me miserable. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I wonder how I could make my wife miserable today. I have to work on that.
Well, maybe a sociopath, but
I
other
was
than
going to
that,
say, you'd have to be a psychopath, right?
Right.
But we sometimes feel like that's just what they're doing. They're just trying to make me, things worse. And if we can come with a level of benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
like I think you said earlier, the idea that they're doing their best. Now their best may be failing miserably at this point, but it's still, everyone's trying to do their best really in the moment. And I love that playfulness,
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought up that one particular thing, because that's been one of my stumbling blocks around this idea that a lot of us don't feel like we know how to ask for what we want, or that we deserve what we desire or what we need. And so it does come with all this baggage.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's exactly what you said. It's, hey, let's skip with the trash. Hey, could you take out the trash? Because, I've been really busy, and I would take it out normally, but I just, and it's heavier than I can lift it, and all this, just because, as you said, the feeling is like, I shouldn't need this or want this. It's not okay for me to ask.
Yeah.
And from the receiving end of that, I feel like, what's wrong? What's the problem here? Why are you trying to twist my arm or convince me? It makes me feel a little bit like, do you not think I want to help? Because I do. But maybe
I love that you said that, because thank you for confirming the thing that I teach, which is when you make a request that's all laden with all that extra baggage on it, the listener, it's actually confusing for the listener. The request itself gets lost in, hang on, what's wrong here? Is that something I need to fix? Does she think I don't want to help her? What does that mean? Oh my God, what have I done wrong? And then the listener goes on this loop and completely forgets the request. You can understand why the request would get lost because of the loop you just described so elegantly. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And also that then when it happens again, whether there's an explanation or not, we can carry around that feeling of the last time. And it's like, oh, it's that weird request that she made, and I don't understand it. And it's draining or whatever. It's icky.
Yeah, it's icky. It just feels icky.
Yeah, I feel like you have this emotional slime that gets on you and stuff. So I love the way you and Patrick do that, playful and giving the person like a chance to have a do-over.
Yes.
A do-over is so great in relationships.
Do-overs are the bomb.
They are just like act 1, scene 2. Take 2.
So give a quick rundown, because we're just about at time. Just give a quick rundown of how you might teach somebody to do a do-over, because I think that's super useful and I want to bring that in.
Absolutely. And it can be as simple as this. Let's say you step in it, right? You do something, you say something, you act in a way, you show up in a way you really wasn't your best and you didn't want to. It's as easy as with humility saying, hey, you know what? Remember earlier on when I kind of, barked at you? That's not the way I want to show up. Could I have a do-over? It's like you already have this nomenclature in your relationship, right? Could I have a do-over? Could I try that again? What I really want to say is, it's not any more complicated than that. That's
it.
It's a repair attempt, as John Gottman calls it. It's the olive branch of, I acknowledge what happened. I'm not going to just pretend it didn't happen. I'm self-aware enough to know that wasn't my best. And let's do take 2 here for a moment, if you're willing.
That's beautiful. Yes. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just highlight how, I know you primarily work with men, but you said recently that you are stepping into some work with women as well. How, right, if someone wanted to contact you and hear more about your work, what would be the best step? And also, this is going to be in the show notes. So if you're driving, don't worry, I got you.
I'll try to write it down while you're driving.
Yeah.
The easiest way is to go to my website, which is www.lionhearted.men.
Oh, cool.
So it's .men, not .com. So it's not lionheartedmen.com. It's lionhearted.men. Who knew they had that extension, right?
Amazing.
Yes. So that's the best way to see what I'm up to. Also, my email address is tim@lionhearted.men. That's pretty easy. You can write me. You can contact me through that there. And yes, I will be expanding into some things along the same lines as what we've just been talking about. Like for women who want to understand how men think, or if they do. And so you can ask me, write me and tell me to keep you in mind when I start doing that work.
Beautiful. And I understand you also have a free gift, and this gift happens to be directed at men. So if women are listening and you know a man who's in this situation, pass this on to them. What's your gift?
The free gift is called My Wife Wants Space. What does she mean and what to do now? And it's basically a lot of men I work with end up in a situation where their marriage has been going downhill and things have been really not going well. The man doesn't know what's going on. And then the woman steps up and says, I can't do this anymore. I need some space from you, or something along those lines. And the man just goes into a panic. So you can either go to my website and you can sign up and download it there. You can also go to mywifewantspace.com, which makes it really easy, and get a hold of it. It's an ebook. It's an easy read. So if you have somebody in your life that maybe is struggling in a relationship crisis, in a marriage crisis, this can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been so great talking with you today. And do you have a final thought that you'd like to leave folks with, some kind of final word?
I think the most important thing is just remember what you said. You're in this together. You're a partnership. Do you want partnership? Then go for that, and hold the other person with high regard all the time. Just know the benefit of the doubt. They're doing their best. They're your partner. Keep that as your lens on the situation.
Oh, thank you. That feels yummy. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And until next time, remember that a great relationship starts with you.